Welcome back. This time we're talking about blade shapes. Let's start with the drop point. Drop point, pretty classic. It is my preferred and a go-to. With the drop point, you get a fairly durable tip. It's still plenty pointy, but not so brittle that you have to worry as much about it snapping off, which unfortunately I have done before. And like everything, drop points tend to come in a variety. Like here's a drop point that's almost a spear point. In fact, you could argue it either way. I would call that a drop point. So that's a couple examples there. I don't want to make this video last forever, so I'm just kind of rush through stuff, maybe hit some key talking points. But yeah, it's pretty standard, possibly the most standard in knife style. Second type would be the clipped point. Here's an extreme case of a clip point knife. Obviously, that gets its name from this little bit of metal that would get clipped out of the manufacturing process, as opposed to that. So take a drop point, cut out that bit, clip it out, boom, clip point knife. This video is already starting to sound pedantic. There's another extreme clip point, and one so subtle, hard to tell if it's clip point or closer to a spear point. Not quite a drop point. I don't know. Blade geometry is fun to categorize. And short of the Bowie, your pronunciation may vary, but here is one of the more classic clip point styles, the old Ka-Bar. Let's get that in the frame better. So this knife I carried while I was in the Marines. I beat the crap out of this thing, but it treated me well. And got classic clip there, which is supposed to be a false edge, but I took care of that. Now it's a real edge. And it also has that blood groove. People think it's to let the blood flow somewhere. Really, it's just a way to lighten the blade. Another style is the dagger blade or the spear point. Goes by both names. The real key to this one is the near blade symmetry, with the one line going down the middle, which the name of that eludes me at the moment. But as opposed to the drop point, the spear point or dagger blade could easily be sharpened on either side, whereas the drop point obviously has a dedicated spine that would never be sharpened. Another style that I am very fond of is the Wharncliffe. Wharncliffe has a very straight edge here, and the spine of the blade drops down to meet that very flat edge, and as such gives you a very nasty point right there. The Wharncliffe is great for ease of sharpening, but that's a very delicate tip there. Let's go back to the drop point, and yeah, these are really my only clip point examples. So you can see in, say, tip strength, where you would get the strongest tip out of this one, followed by the clip point, and the Wharncliffe being quite delicate. Let's leave that out for a second, because a close cousin to the Wharncliffe blade is the sheep's foot. Now this is, the term hybrid comes up a lot in blade types. If anything doesn't fit neatly into a category, you would call it a something hybrid. So like this might be a clip point hybrid of the spear point. Well, this would be a Wharncliffe hybrid, sharing characteristics of the sheep's foot. Here's another example of what I would call a Wharncliffe, except it does have a bit of a belly right there, which almost negates the Wharncliffe-ness. Yes, I just made up that word. Key feature of Wharncliffe and sheep's foot is the very flat edge. Now, speaking of the sheep's foot, that's close, but not really it. This is another one that I would call a hybrid. So it's almost cleaver, but still has characteristics of a sheep's foot. Whereas this is an actual cleaver. So you can see where there's almost a progression from one to the other. Whew, that line, or that frame lock, is very stiff. Oh, I didn't talk about the Tonto, which I don't have any of because I'm not a Tonto fan. But I think everyone here really knows what a Tonto is. Straight back, angle, another straight blade, and you got handle stuff going on over here. Yeah, let's throw some jimping in there. There, boom, knife. So it has edge there with very clear line there, and ooh, that line, oh man, that went to shit. But you get the idea. Tanto, as opposed to classic Japanese knife making, modern tanto is a sharp angle right there, where Japanese knife making, it would actually have a bit of a belly. It would round out right there. What's next? Standard blade, also known as the straight back blade. Again, I don't have an example of, not really my flavor, but this Moriniv, yes, that is the correct pronunciation, is the closest thing I have to a straight back. This thing is technically a drop point because of that slight angle there, but were that not to dip and just come straight out, straight back blade. By the way, great knife, $10, highly recommend. One thing is, since it is carbon steel, this is not rust resistant, and it will tarnish, and you might be able to see the tarnish on there, and it'll rust very easily. Got to keep up on this. Comes in a great sheath too. Drain hole. The classic Hawkbill. My gas station knife. The Hawkbill has the recurved edge. The reason I only own the one is because they're a pain in the ass to sharpen. But for general cutting tasks, say, opening sacks and stuff like that, once you get the blade into something, it wants to stay in and finish the cut. Whereas you take something with a lot of belly on it, like that, and depending on how firm, rigid, stiff the item is that you're cutting into, that can want to skitter off, where that wants to stay and keep cutting. But you need special stones to be able to sharpen that recurve. Bought this one on a lark. Next is the reverse tanto. This might be one of the more famous examples of the reverse tanto in the knife world. This is the Benchmade Osborne. The reverse tanto has the straight spine there, but it's got belly opposite. So it's not just a clever name, it's the reverse of a tanto. Crazy. Not really a whole lot more to say about this one. It's my only example as well. What's the next knife? Trailing point. I don't have one of those either. So instead, back to arts and crafts time. Trailing point. Think of a military cavalry saber, where you got the blade coming down, and I screwed up this picture already. Oh, that is horrible. No, I don't like that. Oh, how can I draw this? I've never been good at art. Screw it. And nah, that ain't it either. Yeah, I should have just brought up a picture of one. So, artwork aside, think of a Civil War era cavalry military saber. How the spine of the blade curves up to the tip and it has a big old belly on it, except in a small package. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a knife, it'd be a sword. What else I got? Ah, the kukri. Not sure how many people are familiar with the kukri, but I'm gonna have to zoom out for this one. The kukri. This one is a big old blade. The kukri, I don't know if it started off as a combat knife, but it makes an excellent machete slash fighting knife. Because this thing is absolutely a chopper waiting to happen. So this one I bought because, one, I didn't have one, and everyone needs a kukri. And two, bought it so my wife could chop down her berry bushes out in the yard and around her greenhouse. I think there might be a little wear showing on this, but otherwise it's holding up quite nice. One thing I don't like about this particular one is this sawback is kind of a pain in the ass and rather unnecessary. If I need a saw, I'll get a saw. Don't need one on the back of my knife. All it does is snag on the sheath and make it harder to take out. But otherwise, having big chunk of metal up here, very little back here, puts all the momentum and force far away from your hand, increasing your swing speed. Maybe I'll have to do some studies on that one. But the force here when you're chopping right at that belly is insane. Kukris have garnered a reputation for being very nasty fighting knives, and I personally have not chopped anything with this yet. My wife has. She loves it. But I need to put this thing through its paces. Can't wait. And don't know if I have enough room here on the board with all the different knives, but I'm going to try to pull out an example of each one and maybe make a thumbnail out of this. So I got the drop point, I got the clip point, I don't have a tanto to show, spear point, it's right there. My Wharncliffe, oh definitely the CRKT. Great example of a Wharncliffe. Sheep's foot. This awful Gerber is the only one that I have close to a sheep's foot. Bought it because I like that little bamboo insert, but this thing's a terrible knife. Where do I want to put that? Oh, how in frame is that? You can go down here. And that's the closest I got to the standard Mahawk bill. set that there. Reverse Tonto. And the kukri centered up. Let's clean up some of this other stuff. And there it is. An example of the most common blade types on the market. All right, thanks for joining.